Okay, so this is what most people would see when they see tech data. We're a large Fortune 500 company, 115,000 customers worldwide. Incidentally, as Mikhail mentioned, we don't touch end customers. We only touch customers that address the market themselves. 14,000 employees, hundreds of thousands of products, lots of suppliers. Obviously, a key one of those suppliers being Microsoft. So this is one of the challenges we're facing, is as we move into the new emerging technology space, we're having to, I think you mentioned old and boring earlier. We're having to shake a little bit of that and learn how to be a little bit more agile and a little bit fresher in our approach to how we address the market. About 3 or 4 years ago, we really identified that about 70% of our business was really sitting in areas which were heavily commoditizing, and our ability to add value in those spaces was also reducing. Okay. So we set out a new strategy and direction. A lot of that started with Microsoft really looking at how we can help be more effective around new areas such as cloud some time ago, and then other business units were formed to sit within our next generation division to address areas such as Internet of Things and advanced analytics, which is where for us AI sits, but also mobility and new flavors of security and all these kinds of things. So our strategic focus is very much now investing in these next generation technology areas, how we strengthen our end-to-end portfolio. So not just addressing the little boxes that we ship through the door and arrive on a customer's doorstep and hope they know what to do with it, but really trying to allow a business outcome to the kind of end customer solutions that we are providing for our customers to take to market. Also, we are actively involved in our own digital transformation. How do we improve our customers' journey through navigating the machine that is tech data? How do we now allow them to be more engaged, more informed, and empowered through their interaction with us? And how do we optimize our global footprint? So how do we remove the silos of data and expertise and knowledge that we've generated through some 50, 60 years in the industry at the scale that we're at, and actually make the most use of that globally as an organization? So these are all areas that we are focusing on, and we believe these are all areas where actually a lot of our vendors are focusing, and to some extent our customers, the resellers, system integrators, service providers in the market. Okay. What we have found is that the traditional paradigms of channel, where you might have, let's say, a manufacturer or developer, and then a vendor, a distributor, then a reseller, and then a customer, that chain of value that goes on down, is actually changing somewhat. It's now more of a hive and a sphere of activity. We've got resellers who've created IP and developed their own IP and are wanting to become some kind of independent software vendor. We've got independent software vendors that are wanting to monetize themselves as service providers, either through platforms as a service or software as a service models. And we've got vendors that are wanting us to help them address customers directly within their account base, where typically we might not have seen that revenue because there's a whole new ecosystem at play here. So what we are doing as tech data really is to try and provide a platform to be a conduit to allow this new flavor of business to happen, to allow our customers, our suppliers, our ecosystem to really be what they want to be as they transform themselves, and to leverage us as best they can to make that happen. So we've invested in these next generation areas, so IoT and analytics, security, cloud, mobility, a bunch of others. We've stood up a number of centers of excellence to make sure that we are capitalizing on providing that knowledge to the channel. And then obviously we're evolving the ecosystem, we're providing education services, we're developing solutions, and I'll talk more about that. So, by now you should all know what AI is. Anybody not got a clue what AI is? I suppose just a couple of definitions as we see it, and then I wanted to just present a few challenges that we found. As I mentioned, AI for us sits within our IoT and advanced analytics business, and as such, sometimes they interplay. Wherever there is an IoT perspective, there should be an AI story, but that's not always true in the reverse. So for us, AI allows companies to make higher impact decisions with more comprehensive data through evidence and increasingly accurate prediction technologies. And the IoT piece allows them to extend the acquisition of that supporting data to the physical realm and to take action based on those insights to the physical realm. So that's kind of a simplistic way of looking at that for us. The challenge that we found is that actually to operate in this space, we were having to address entirely new channels. The AI community obviously exists. There's a large number of big players. You take the Microsofts providing platforms, providing services, and then there's a younger generation of companies who are more agile, born in the cloud, completely new ways of operating, which are maybe a little bit more difficult for us to understand, to get our head around. So we're dealing with much, an ever-increasing, I suppose, evolving channel, which is fun for us. But also, we are trying to make sure that our solutions aren't just addressing horizontal problems, but they're vertically focused. One thing we found with both AI and with IoT is that the budgets within end customers is increasingly shifting from the IT budget to the line of business. Now, at some point, this may circle back round where the IT budget is built in to support those lines of business more effectively, but increasingly, marketing budgets, operational expenditures, sales budgets, all these kinds of things are budgets where they are developing new solutions for those businesses, either in AI or IoT. So as such, we've needed to make sure that we understand those industries, their challenges, and how we address those, and how we enable a channel of resellers to address those challenges. Okay. I'm not going to dwell on this too much. There's an evolving set of definitions around AI. I'll skip through this actually, but suffice it to say you have statistical tools, you have if this, then that type functions, and then you have deep learning, artificial networks, which simulate, I suppose, a human approach to disseminating information, developing insights. But we won't touch on that too much. A few interesting areas, I suppose. So reinforcement learning is, I suppose, through a process of trial and error, particularly useful in autonomous navigation vehicles, robots, which you might see in warehouses, cars. You train an AI system to approach a problem through trial and error and giving it a scoring system. So this is, as I mentioned, something where it's acquiring that skill. More commonly for us, we are seeing unsupervised learning systems, which might be approaching customer segmentation for retail in a different way. Looking at customers not just within context of their age, demographic, location, but in the context of their behavior, how they interact with the business's e-commerce platform or in-store, if they have the benefit of systems to see that, and then recommending how to interact with that customer, how to market to them, how to entice them to buy more, how to classify them a little better. And then supervised learning systems, which is more statistical tools around regression, where you might be looking at forecasting, predicting consumption of something, or looking to identify patterns or anomalies which might indicate something like fraud or might indicate something like a failure in a machine or a system, for example. So, no more technology. I wanted to give a little bit of an interesting perspective, and I had a little bit of a paradigm shift, I suppose, in myself from hearing a very good talk by a chap called AJ Agarwal. A little bit of recommended reading. This is not a formal tech data recommendation, one of my own, but a very good book for those that are wanting to maybe explore other ways of looking at AI. So AJ was I suppose, the head of the economics department for Toronto University, and then became a lead I suppose, founder within an AI accelerator group over in Canada, and offers a very good explanation as to how to look at, I suppose, monetizing AI, how to view it within the context of the economics of things. So I'm going to just talk a little bit to that and step a little bit back to one of the, I suppose, the former and founding technologies that has enabled AI. So if we go back to the internet economy, we heard earlier new ways of things being monetized, such as APIs. We're going to hear about the API economy more and more in the press going forward, the internet economy around the dot-com boom. So everyone started referring to the internet back in the late 90s as its own economy because it was so trusted, it was so pervasive in the way that we operated on a day-to-day, heavily adopted, and it massively changed the way that we interacted with the economy. So they referred to it as this new economy. It was changing everything. Despite the fact that actually the economists weren't referring to this new thing as a new economy. All the existing rules of supply and demand still existed. So supply and demand, production, consumption, all these things were still there. The thing that changed were a few key inputs to that market that fundamentally shifted the way that they interact with the economy. So the cost of communication got cheaper, the cost of search got cheaper, and the cost of digitally distributing goods got cheaper. And when something gets cheaper, everyone flocks towards it. It has a whole impact on the dynamic of the way that you interact with that particular thing. And ultimately, when something gets cheaper, any substitute for that thing becomes cheaper, or is expected to be, loses its value somewhat. Anything that is a complement to that gains in value. So if coffee gets cheaper, tea is expected to get cheaper, but maybe milk and sugar become more valuable. So I'm going to pose a question. Who here wants to have a stab at what drove the rise of the semiconductor? So all the x86 and ARM and everything else that we do today. Anyone have a stab at that? I'm going to pick someone otherwise. No, I'm not. The software spiral. Okay, interesting. Any others? Sorry? The mobile economy? Possibly. Absolutely. So, all very good answers. And a few others that I've heard are maybe improvements in manufacturing processes, cheaper processes around building this stuff, miniaturization. The economic view would be that arithmetic got cheaper. So everyone rushed towards this thing. Everybody wanted to use this thing, this new cheap arithmetic, beneficial to accountants, beneficial to NASA, beneficial to sales organizations, marketing organizations. Those number crunchers that were so, let's say, asynchronous in their approach to looking at statistics and numbers and doing interesting things were now less valuable because this new cheap arithmetic started to take rise. And that really drove adoption, that drove the ability to scale manufacturing, big business comes about, and so on and so forth. So the question is, when we look at AI, what gets cheaper? Anybody want to have a stab at something that gets cheaper that maybe shifts, that moves the needle when it comes to AI?
Maintenance.
Sorry? Maintenance. Okay. Analysis, yep. So AJ's view is that prediction is the thing that gets cheaper. So fundamentally, one of the benefits of AI is that we have this new prediction technology. And prediction is an integral part to how we approach decisions on a day-to-day within the workflows of a number and variety of different jobs. And that could be from being a sales director, that could be a finance director, that could be an operator. At some point, you need to take an input, take some data from somewhere, do some analysis of that data and predict some kind of outcome. What's going to happen if I do or if I don't? What do I need to do? Make a judgment, take an action, have an outcome. And ultimately, that prediction technology becoming cheaper means that all of the complements around it become more valuable. So the data that we're looking at, we look at IoT, for example, because of AI, data being talked about as the new oil, that term that we all hate by now. The thing that's making it new is because we're getting new value out of it. We have more data from systems, from things, and actually the ability to monetize people that can ask good questions based on these predictions becomes increasingly more valuable. So how can we start to think about applying this? Now, we look at ultimately every organization has a number of lines of business. Each of the people within those lines of business has a day-to-day job that they have to achieve and a set of tasks, and within those tasks ultimately exist a number of decisions that have to be made. So the question is, when you look at that organization, which of those tasks would most benefit from better prediction or faster prediction, more accurate prediction, better judgment, maybe more impactful outcomes? The answer is all of them, but at some level you have to prioritize for the most part. And really just mapping onto each of those identified tasks, ultimately what's the action within that task that the user has to do? What's the outcome he's trying to achieve? What judgment does he have to make about any given situation that sits within that task? What's the prediction? What data does he need to have? Does he have all the right data in order to do that? And then ultimately, how are you going to train that model to achieve that prediction to aid his judgment? And how are you going to improve the algorithm based on feeding the outcomes back into that data? So this is just one approach, and I'm sure there are many. Everyone has an opinion on the best way to approach AI to get started, to think about how to monetize. And the interesting piece about this is obviously there is a rich consulting opportunity in here. You know, if you, we saw the EY people yesterday, they're business process outsourcers. This is a pipeline for them. This is a real opportunity. And for our system integrators, it's an opportunity to look at how they can consult within those processes, either by helping action some of the guidance that's been given by business process advisors, for example. There's a number of opportunities that come from this in the consulting space. And ultimately, what we're finding increasingly, and one of the areas we're having to improve ourselves, is by acknowledging that either through partnership, development, acquisition, however you want to do it, to be in this bit, you have to not just address the IT skills and knowledge and expertise, but you also have to have the business skills to be able to apply some critical thinking to the processes, the constraints, the legal aspects, all of these kinds of things, and then obviously to be able to take the data and then engineer those features that are required to be able to develop those algorithms and do whatever you need to do, and the IT skills to be able to move the data into the right place, to secure it, to store it, however which way. So it really is, you know, a challenge for many people to think about, this is where we play, a traditional system integrator, for example, or this is where we play, one of these new born-in-the-cloud AI developers, or this is where we play, a business processing outsourcer. How do we complement other organizations and develop this together, or how do we grow into that space ourselves? So, I was asked to do a slide on why get involved, what's the opportunity. I mean, ultimately, we've spoken about a number of them. New consulting opportunities is a big one, a number of areas, and that could be consulting around the data, or around the outcome, or around the processes that you're going to help them address. Access to the line of business. Many IT organizations have been accessing the IT department freely for a number of years and maybe struggle to have a beneficial discussion that leads to revenue within the C-level, for example, within the marketing level, within the finance team of that organization. How can you monetize and increase your share of wallet there? And then ultimately, big numbers. We've all seen some of the big numbers and the fact that there's a number of different models that you can monetize with. Well, I heard someone talk earlier about developing algorithms and then monetizing them through APIs, either through marketplaces or through selling them to other partners, other customers, for example. Okay, so where are we focusing? I'll speed along. We are focusing ourselves to support the vertical, I suppose, type solutions, the vertical outcomes, because we feel that actually this is where we can help our partners diversify how they're approaching their customers, how they can increase the value in the sale, increase the value to the customer, and accelerate their opportunities by helping identify end-to-end solutions that address specific challenges through use cases. And that might be around a 360 view of a customer in retail and how to recommend and monetize them better. That might be through a smart building piece where you want to improve wellness, environment, productivity, mental well-being using AI sitting on top of IoT data, or improving fleet and logistics through geospatial analytics and AI, or manufacturing with predictive maintenance, a number of things that we can work to here. So that's how we've been, I suppose, addressing AI and IoT collectively. We've built a portfolio of stuff. Ultimately, wherever there's not a core vendor, we've added a specialized vendor to address an area that we feel our core vendors could benefit from working with within that ecosystem. But that's not the important bit, really. It's about our role. So on to our role. Our role is to be an aggregator of that stuff, to set that technology in context of vertical solutions so you can speak to your customers in their own lexicon, in their own language, and have a productive, constructive conversation. And obviously the key here is getting to that point where you can monetize the bit that you do. The rest of the bit is as frictionless as possible in terms of identifying the technology and the partnerships and the use cases, and it creates new models either for yourselves or for the customer or for us to be, I suppose, evolving as we work through this marketplace. A few things we've learned in brief. We can build anything. Technology is not the problem. In fact, the technology people, half the time with the fanciful ideas, I've been guilty of it myself, if we could do this, it would be amazing, often don't play through when you really look at how you should monetize it, what's the business case for it. So you can build anything. Ultimately, there has to be a need, there has to be a demand. We understand a lot of where that demand is within end customers. We understand the value of the solutions we put into the market from an end customer perspective. What we haven't done so well up until now is helping our customers, the resellers, the integrators, the service providers, understand their bit. How can they effectively monetize and add their value to that piece in the middle? So that's really been the next step in our journey. And our focus going forward is we've put a digital practice builder program in place. The goal of that is mentorship. We've enlisted some very good consulting companies to work with us in helping our customers, the partners, identify their place within that value chain and take proactive steps towards executing on that. And then obviously a catalog of solutions which we've been developing around both IoT, AI analytics to help ease the friction around the consumption of what solutions you have available. So that's everything I wanted to talk about. Was that mildly useful? Nods, shakes of head? Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I know we're meeting with many of you later. Any others want a conversation, I'll be around for the duration. So I'll look forward to talking to you. Thank you.